There's other products that they got to on the other side of the railroad tracks. Once they got that molten stuff, the good raw stuff made, then they would ship it to the east side of the track so they could shape it or cook it or store it or whatever they're going to do before it went elsewhere. So Joliet was a really good place to be in the steel industry back then because it was getting a lot of the technology. You know, things were coming over from England or Europe, and then they would go into Pittsburgh, and then they would come here. So we were like second in line for a lot of the things that got installed or some of that cutting edge technology for the steel industry. And then about 25 years into its life, Gary, Indiana started picking up some business because they were right on the lakeshore. So now they didn't have to move it inland and they didn't have to ship it back to the lake to get it out to their customers. And so that saved a little bit of money, and people started using Gary more than they started using Joliet. So the life of the plant itself is about 50 years. It was about 1880 as a functional plant until about 1932. So when the Depression hit, the whole industry just got whacked. And so everybody lost their jobs. They had a few finishing mills at the end. But this, as a plant making iron, was done as of 1935. So a lot of the stuff that you walk on our property, all of that, the big silhouettes I'm showing you, all that got cannibalized. And so it just got taken down and sent to the plants that were working, or it got melted down and made into stuff for somebody else. Yeah.
That's interesting, because I guess I was under the impression that there was something, I mean, there certainly was other industry in Joliet and the really tough years for Joliet, or the 70s and 80s, I think, was there something that was a successor to this plant operating?
Well, the thing that remained, I mean, it literally was idle, I think, for about a decade, and then in the 40s it picked up again as a finishing mill. So people would bring them some of those shapes or whatever, and then the finishing mills would make barbed wire or chicken wire fencing or things like that. So they stayed in business as a finishing mill on the other side of the tracks up until 2002. But it wasn't on the same scale. I mean, we're talking about the 400 or 450 acres as a total property. They really had maybe 4 or 5 buildings working in the 40s and 50s until 2002, and then they had 2 main buildings that were there under Birmingham Steel's umbrella. So it was gradually scaled back. I mean, it was a big cutback in the Depression, and then they had, like I said, the side business. The finishing business was the thing that kind of kept them going for about 50 years.
Okay. All right. I have to rejigger my timetable a little bit. I think Brandon had a